Hello, welcome to another class, and in this class we'll be talking about objects in JavaScript. We already discussed about arrays earlier, and I said in this class we'll be talking about objects. So let's just continue. Okay, this is where we are in our code. What we did the last class on arrays. So let's just finish up. I'll just comment this out, then we just let's not affect our code, then we move on to objects. I want this, let me bring this up. I'll be able to see it. Objects. So what are objects? Objects, I would say, are basically, anyway, before we continue, in JavaScript everything or almost everything is an object. Strings are objects, integers, numbers, arrays are a kind of object also. So in JavaScript almost every kind of thing is an object, but objects in this sense we are talking about are key value pairs, or I would say properties and value. So they are declared in such a way that you would be able to, rather than in cases of array where we could actually use indexes, with objects you'll be able to use keys and their value to attribute to values. So in objects in JavaScript is similar to dictionaries in Python, and some other languages have similar things to objects. But the beauty of objects is, like for instance, you get to richly describe a real life scenario, real life objects. For instance, if you want to describe a person, you would have something like a name, age, class, or that is school, or occupation, and you have so many attributes to that person. Objects allows you to capture it all into one. So let's say we want to describe a person or a student, for instance. So using objects, you could say let student. You can already use so many student stuff. So let me say pupil equal to, we declare an object with the squiggly brackets like this. So this is now an object. This is not an array. Array is with the square brackets, but this is with the curly brackets. So this is how we declare an object in JavaScript. So now, like I said, we could actually, it's key value pairs. So you could say name of this pupil, and I like to use the regular John Doe, so say John, but the value is in if it's a string, would be in quotation mark, either single or double quote. So John, and you separate it with a comma. So like to make it a little bit more easy to read. So name John, age as age 5 years, or we could make it 5. Class. Class is a reserved word, but I think we could use it in this case. Since we're not using it as a variable. Class is and we put primary 5. Then what else about the students? Grade, position, and maybe it took second. And this is an object describing in, so I could even say last name or surname, and we say do, put a comma to, and this is an object. And if you see the difference, this is more richer. We can actually do a lot with this. We could imagine you are filling up an address book, and you have so many people in your class. So you could use something as rich as this to put more details about each pupil, and an object could later form an array. So you could have an array of multiple objects. Like I would explain that with an example shortly. But imagine, so you can imagine how you can actually begin to arrange your data or your data in such a way that you can do so many things with it. So how do you access individual properties of an array? So like this pupil array now, let's say we want to know the surname of this person. We could easily access it by saying pupil dot surname. You can see it's already the color showing up. And to prove this, let's log this on the console, and you see go back to our browser and refresh, and we see do is the surname of this person. So, and another way we could actually still get let me just, instead of using the dot operator, we could as well say pupil, then use our square brackets. But instead of putting this, we could now put this, our surname, in as if it's a string, and if we would still use our console, we'll still see it's the same thing. Save, then go to your and refresh, you see do, or we could to prove it's a different thing, we could just change it to name. And when we refresh, we see it's short now. So basically that's how to access item, and they are not immutable, so you can actually use the same method to change the name. For instance, let's say we want to change the name of this pupil from John. Let me just copy this, so that I'll just paste it up here and do the change, then we can look at it again. So we could just save this, put an equal to sign, and change his name to Jane. And if we go and let's just check pupil as a whole and see if that works. So let me check on the console. We'll refresh. We'll see his name is no longer John, his name is now Jane, and his surname is Doe, and every other thing, name Jane, position 2, Doe, primary 5, and age 5. So basically this is how to change attributes or properties using this system. So you could even you could decide to use instead of using this, you could still say you want to change the age. You could say pupil dot age equal, then let's change it to 7. It didn't spell age correctly. That's not giving us an error. So equals 7, and when we go to our console, we would see that the age is now 7 instead of 5. So you can even use this method to add other attributes, like let's say we want to add another attribute of race, race or height, let's say 2.5 centimeter or something. I just want to think of some other attribute. So we can say pupil to height, spelling height wrongly, height, I think. Then we make him 4.5. I'm just putting something arbitral, and if we go and check our pupil again, we'll see height has been added to the attributes. So that's actually another way to add attributes to the to the object. So this is objects can contain so many other things. You can actually have even function in an object. Since we've not discussed function, I don't want to go into that yet, but I told you something about arrays having multiple objects. So let's say we have an array of I want to have an array of so let's create an array. Let's children equal an array, and this array would now have multiple. I'll just copy this. So let's say you're a class teacher and you want to have your array could have multiple objects. So this is the first student in your class. You put a comma, you put another. So I'm just pasting this and changing this to Jane. And age 7. Position probably Jane took first, and you can see you can make it even up. You can make it even up to 3. So let me just, then we can go with Andrew Doe, and age 6, and position 3 or third. So you can see it's an array, if you notice, and the array has 3 array objects, basically separated by commas. 3 array objects separated by commas. And when you try to, if you want to access, you can access each of these objects by their index, like you would in normal array. So let's even use our console to see children. So you see we are having an array of 3 objects, as you can see. See, object 1 with the index of 1 has these properties inside. Let me expand it a little bit. Then the second array objects and Andrew, Jane, and Doe, like that, age 5 and 6, powering position. So basically it's an array with objects embedded inside. So this is a more richer way of representing data in using an array and an object the same place. So imagine if you want to access, and let's say you want to access Jane, for instance. Let's do something to access. If you wanted to access Jane, for instance, would be children. Jane was the second object. Yes, so we could just say children dot, children is an array, don't forget, and an array is 0 index base. So if we do this, we'll be getting a single object, which is Jane. And if we want to still further go in and dig in, we want to get Jane's age, we could say dot age, and you see here the dot operator is not coming in. Then when we refresh, would get 7, or if we want to be more specific, we could go for specific, to be sure, we could go for the name, and if we go to our browser and refresh, we see we're getting Jane. So finally, we could also create a new object in another way. This method we just use is called using the object literal, where you just create object name. You just give it let's say new an object equals, then we'll just define it with the square break. This is an object literal. We can also create an object, so we could also say let's an object obj equal new, using the new keyword like we did with arrays. If you follow the array class, new object, and like this we've created an object. And if we want to populate it just like we did with array, you could just simply come here and say object dot color, and we could put blue. Same thing, object dot size. We could also put 1 meter, 50 centimeter, something like that. So 50 cm, We could as well add objects, nodes. What else could we put? I'm just trying to think. Dot width. Width. If I'm spelling the width correctly. Width. I think I'm not sure I'm correct with that spelling, but basically what you should have thought I mean 50, let's say 10 kg. And if we now use our console, I'll just comment this out so that it's not interfere. Use our console to check our objects. We'll see we have populated it with these items. So we have color blue, size 15, then width. In my way of spelling it, I think it's correct. If it's correct, 10 kg. And that's that. That's how to create another way to create an object using the new keyword and populate it with its attributes or properties. So we'll still come back to, we'll still use this as we proceed, and where objects could hold functions, objects could hold a whole lot of things, and as we keep discussing these things, we'll be coming back and forth and using them in examples. So thank you for following this class on objects, and stay tuned for the next class, and hopefully you're enjoying your journey into becoming a JavaScript professional.